You believe that affection guarantees space, but respect shapes territory. The paradox is brutal. The more you seek to be loved, the more disposable you become. This is the mechanism that imprisons most people: the addiction to approval, the need to be seen as likable, approachable, and malleable. However, this hunger doesn't attract protection. It attracts predators. Respect arises when you reject the addiction to reflexes, when you no longer depend on the validation that keeps you submissive. The price of wanting to be loved is always the same: the loss of your own sovereignty. You've grown accustomed to thinking that closeness breeds trust, that explanation breeds understanding, that yielding brings balance. But what you really deliver is power. Insisting on appearing understandable makes you predictable, and predictability is the tool of those who seek to manipulate you. The quest for sympathy turns into invisible chains. Every overly kind gesture signals unlimited availability. And unlimited availability never inspires respect, only exploitation. The hidden mechanism is simple. Approval works like an emotional currency that seems precious but is inflated. Those who live to be liked behave like emotional beggars. They exchange silence for too many words, presence for justifications, position for concessions. The other person smells, albeit unconsciously, the scent of need. And need never imposes an aura of power. It only announces weakness. While you seek smiles, you lose territory. While you try to be understood, you become too legible. Respect requires friction. It doesn't arise from the comfort of being accepted, but from the discomfort of not being easily possessed. Those who don't need applause cause unease, and it's this unease that generates a reverent distance. In the professional sphere, this means refusing the role of the eager-to-please collaborator. In a meeting, strategic silence after a veiled attack speaks louder than a lengthy defense. By not reacting, you force the other person to expose the exaggeration of their own play. When everyone expects you to explain yourself and you don't, your absence of words becomes your most striking presence. In the relational arena, the trap of sympathy is even more visible. Those who seek to be too well liked become emotional playthings, always available to be tested, used, discarded. Respect emerges when you don't bow to the approval game, when you make it clear that affection can be withdrawn without warning, that your presence is rare and never begged for. Silence, here, cuts deeper than any explanation. A cool gesture at the right moment corrects months of subtle intrusions. In the digital space, the court of public opinion rewards the loud but respects the rare. Those who respond to everything demonstrate a desire for acceptance. Those who speak little, who choose when to appear, who fail to explain each attack they suffer, maintain an unattainable aura. Selective presence creates a shadow of unpredictability, and it is this shadow that prevents others from driving you into a corner. Tactical tools emerge from this logic. The first is calibrated silence. You don't ignore out of distraction, you ignore out of calculation. The second is strategic indifference. Not reacting isn't passivity. It's a choice to demonstrate control. Then comes rarity. Not always being available, not expressing every thought, not explaining every decision. The precise cut appears in short, definitive phrases that kill an emotional game without prolonging the duel. When someone presses for affection, their minimal response reveals that there's no fertile ground for manipulation. Ultimately, it's an internal metamorphosis. You abandon the need to be liked, accepting solitude as the price of sovereignty. You discover that you don't need to be interpreted to exist. You don't need to be validated to be real. Inner strength arises when you realize that your indifference is worth more than 100 justifications. Sustained tension, this state in which you endure discomfort without breaking, is what cements your aura. What you lose in this transformation is the childlike comfort of being applauded by everyone. What you gain is the adult clarity that respect is a field earned in silence. Sympathy opens doors, but respect closes gates behind you and protects you. When doubt arises, remember, being liked may be pleasant, but it is respect that makes you untouchable. And if it seems obvious now, remember, the instinct to seek approval will return to try to break this discipline. It will come disguised as impulse, fear, and a desire to explain. Resisting it is what shapes your sovereignty. This is just the beginning of the dismantling. With each step, you will feel the tension increase. In the next stage, the mechanism will be pushed to its limit, showing how the innocence of wanting acceptance fuels the machinery of those who thrive on exploitation. You've learned to distrust the instinct to be liked, but you haven't yet seen the depth of the hidden price it exacts. It's in this second layer that the machinery reveals its cruelty. Those who need the approval of others become invisible to themselves. You begin to live as a reflection of the other's gaze, and every choice becomes tainted by a silent question: what will they think? This constant filter cripples your spontaneity and turns your energy into cheap currency. The smile you force is no longer light-heartedness. It's a sign of submission. Innocence lies in the misconception that kindness and acceptance are forces of power. The naive believe that being loved protects, when in fact it makes them vulnerable. The logic is harsh. The more you strive to please, the less value your gesture has. The uncontrolled abundance of affection, availability and words dilutes your presence to the point of saturation. The other person feels they can push any emotional button, and you will respond immediately. This predictability is a sentence. Those who lack control over their own reactivity lose their aura and with it, respect. In the professional environment, this naivete manifests itself in the employee who always accepts extra tasks without question, who always smiles to maintain harmony, who never dares to disagree. This profile may be liked, but they will never be feared or respected. And without respect, their growth is stunted. Strategic leaders don't look for those who bow down. They look for those who know how to position themselves. The difference lies in one detail. When everyone rushes to please, the voice that remains firm, that speaks less but carries more weight, is the one that makes the impact. The well-liked becomes decorative. The respected becomes indispensable. In the intimate sphere, the desperate search for affection becomes a weakness that invites endless tests. Those who constantly need to be loved accept emotional crumbs and believe they are being served a banquet. The illusion of closeness makes people confuse being remembered with being valued. And every time you explain too much, every time you try to prove you deserve affection, you surrender control. The difference between love and respect is subtle. Love can be given even to the fragile. Respect is only granted to the unshakable. If you seek one but neglect the other, you will become trapped in the game of emotional manipulation. In the digital world, the dismantling of innocence is even more evident. Those who respond to every comment, who justify themselves in the face of every criticism, who beg for attention through excessive presence, dissolve into the mass of noise. Being liked online isn't a shield, it's a trap. Those who play with rarity and selective silence arouse curiosity and impose invisible limits. Your absence speaks louder than the uninterrupted presence of the needy. You become a point of contrast amidst the noise. That's what creates authority. Tactical tools gain new layers here. A deliberate pause in the face of provocation at work disarms the opponent more than a lengthy defense. In the intimate realm, the refusal to explain every detail creates a tension that forces the other person to reflect. In the digital world, the calculated choice to respond only to what matters, ignoring the rest, establishes a framework in which you never seem needy. The precision cut appears in the short sentence that ends an emotional game before it becomes a labyrinth. You don't need long explanations, you need clear boundaries. This process requires internal transformation. It's not just a matter of external tactics, but of enduring the discomfort of not being loved by everyone. It's accepting strategic solitude as the price of respect. The fragile cannot bear the coldness of disapproving looks. The strong discover that these looks are signs of freedom. Inner fortitude is not built to isolate you from the world, but to prevent the world from encroaching on your sovereignty. There comes a point where the quest for approval reveals itself as an addiction and respect as discipline. Addiction is compulsion. Discipline is choice. Those who live compulsively for approval become enslaved to the whims of others. Those who embrace the discipline of respect learn to master their presence as a silent weapon. This difference is what separates the masses from the strategists. You now realize that the innocence of wanting to be loved above all else not only weakens you, but fuels the power of those who know how to exploit your neediness. This is the true hidden mechanism. The exploiter doesn't need to be smarter, just patient. They observe your approval-seeking pattern, learn which buttons to push, and then effortlessly control you. You believe you're gaining affection, but you're paying with your autonomy. If the seed of doubt was planted in the first part, now it begins to grow. Being too well liked not only diminishes your respect, but builds an invisible prison around your will. In the next step, the dismantling will intensify. You'll see how breaking this prison requires radical detachment, and how silence becomes a weapon that redefines the game. You already understand that the innocence of seeking acceptance weakens you, but you haven't yet realized how deeply this dependence corrodes your identity. The desire to be liked not only surrenders control, but gradually erases your ability to make decisions for yourself. Every concession made to please others distorts your boundaries until you no longer recognize yourself. It's at this point that respect becomes unattainable, because no one respects someone who doesn't respect themselves first. The mechanism is clear. When your priority is being accepted, your mind goes into defensive mode. You anticipate judgment, shape your speech to please, and avoid firm positions for fear of rejection. The consequence is a diluted discourse, always malleable, always insecure. Others perceive, even if they don't say it, that you are too malleable, and malleable is synonymous with disposable. Respect is born from friction, not from constant adaptation. Unmeasured docility doesn't inspire trust. It inspires silent contempt. In the professional world, this pattern manifests itself brutally. The employee who never says no, who never sets their own priorities, is seen as a tool, not a force. Being liked keeps them useful only until the day their usefulness loses relevance. The respected employee, on the other hand, is the one who knows how to refuse, who chooses their battles, who speaks little but makes themselves heard. The paradox is clear. When you try to please everyone, you lose ground. When you take firm positions, even your opponents measure their words when faced with you. In the intimate sphere, excessive emotional need creates a dynamic of endless testing. Those who constantly seek affection demonstrate neediness, and neediness invites exploitation. The other person discovers they can withdraw attention and receive submission in return. They discover they can impose conditions, and you will accept out of fear of loss. This cycle is devastating. The more you offer yourself, the less value you possess. Respect here arises when your presence doesn't depend on the other person's approval, when you demonstrate that you know how to withdraw without begging. It is in this gesture that the balance shifts. In the digital world, the quest for acceptance is even more cruel. Excessive exposure, immediate responses, and the anxiety for validation in every comment turn you into a predictable pawn in the public game. You become dependent on likes and praise, and every criticism destabilizes you. The respected person, on the other hand, controls the pace of their exposure. They don't respond to everything. They don't justify themselves in every attack. They don't need to prove their innocence to every accusation. They maintain a calculated silence, and this silence protects them. The court of public opinion is too noisy to sustain admiration, but it respects the rare, the untouchable, those who don't bow to the vice of reflex. Practical tools intertwine in this scenario. Silence is not an escape, but an imposition. It creates discomfort in the other person, who expects an immediate reaction and doesn't receive one. The deliberate pause forces you to expose yourself more than you should, while you preserve your aura. Strategic indifference is the ability to observe attacks without reacting, demonstrating that you are not conditioned by the stimulus. Rarity is a game of presence, appearing when it matters, disappearing when there is no gain, creating the perception that each contact is valuable. The precision cut is the short phrase that ends a toxic dialogue without leaving room for prolongation. It's not relevant. I won't insist. It's clear. Each minimal word carries weight because it is rare. This external discipline can only be sustained through internal metamorphosis. You must endure the discomfort of being disliked, misunderstood, and accused of coldness. It is at this point that your inner strength emerges. Every impulse to justify yourself must be restrained. Every desire to please must be transmuted into focus. This doesn't make you insensitive, but strategic. You learn to distinguish between giving affection by choice and giving affection out of fear. One is power, the other is weakness. Transformation demands sacrifice. You'll lose superficial connections, the illusion of always being in harmony with everyone, and the childish feeling that being loved is synonymous with security. But what you gain in return is solidity. The clarity that respect is the true basis of influence, not sympathy. the certainty that you don't need to beg for space because your presence already commands territory. This is the discipline few can endure. By now, the seed of doubt that paved the way has blossomed into clarity. Wanting to be liked makes you vulnerable. Choosing to be respected makes you untouchable. Still, the social machinery will continue to try to lure you back, offering small doses of approval as bait. The next step will be understanding how to use this very bait against the system, inverting the logic, transforming silence, absence, and unpredictability into weapons that force others to seek your approval, not the other way around. You've already realized that the thirst for approval undermines your power, but now you need to see how the wheels can be turned. The same mechanism that has weakened you so far can be manipulated to your advantage. Instead of begging for acceptance, you create rarity. Instead of justifying, you maintain silence. Instead of adapting to every expectation, you become unreadable. Those who don't seek to be liked transform other people's needs into a field of influence. The logic is simple. Everyone hungers for validation. It's instinctive, animal, visceral. Few, however, know how to resist this impulse. When you stop being just another beggar for approval and start scaling your presence like a scarce currency, the tables are turned. Others begin to vie for crumbs of your attention because rarity breeds desire, and desire breeds respect. Most people's mistake is offering abundance. The strategist's success is offering silence and appearing only when their appearance changes the context. In the professional world, the reversal happens in small gestures. While colleagues rush to be attentive to every detail, you choose the exact moment to intervene. The impact is proportional to your selectivity. Those who speak little but clearly and firmly shape the atmosphere. Those who respond to everything fade away. The lack of justification, the refusal to be overly accessible, creates the perception that your time is valuable. Respect is born in this contrast. While everyone offers too much, you charge dearly for your energy. In intimate relationships, the reversal is even more evident. Those who don't bow to the need for approval establish invisible boundaries. The other learns that they can't manipulate their presence with emotional blackmail. They learn that their absence is possible, that their company isn't guaranteed. This creates tension, and it's precisely this tension that sustains respect. You don't need shouting or threats. A prolonged silence, a calculated withdrawal, is enough for the other person to realize they're not in control. Those who constantly seek to be loved become predictable. Those who are capable of disappearing become unforgettable. In the digital world, this inversion takes the form of unpredictability. You don't let yourself be captured by the compulsion to respond to everything. You don't enter the court of noise to justify yourself. Instead, you choose when to appear and when to remain silent. This unpredictability creates an aura. Your prolonged absence forces others to speculate, to project, to imagine. Your selective presence has more impact than 1,000 posts. Those who seek to be liked wear themselves out with excess. Those who seek respect control the pace of the game. The tools become more honed at this stage. Silence ceases to be merely defensive and becomes offensive. Strategic pauses create discomfort and force the other person to expose their vulnerabilities. Calculated indifference becomes a weapon that dismantles emotional blackmail. When someone expects a reaction and doesn't receive it, their narrative loses strength. Rarity becomes energy management. You're not always available, and that's precisely why your presence is valuable. Precision cutting becomes a surgical technique. Minimal sentences that end games before they even begin. All of this is only possible because the internal metamorphosis is already underway. You no longer react impulsively. You endure the discomfort of disapproval without giving in. You understand that the price of sovereignty is strategic solitude, but that it is precisely this solitude that gives you real power. Respect cannot be asked for, begged for, or bought. It is earned by the clarity with which you define your limits and the coolness with which you maintain those limits when they are tested. This point marks the most radical transformation. You stop seeking to be liked and start provoking others to seek your approval. This isn't vulgar manipulation. It's self-control that spills over into the environment. Those who control their own needs also control the perception of others. Your aura changes. Your presence changes. You stop being a reflection and become a reference. The doubt sown at the beginning seems different now. You begin to see that being liked may be comfortable, but it will never be synonymous with respect. True power is not born of sympathy, but of the discomfort your firmness generates in others. Still, the cycle is not complete. The final step will show you how to solidify this metamorphosis into a definitive fortress, how to seal the internal pact that makes you untouchable, indifferent to the external court, and sovereign in your own territory. You've gone through the dismantling, endured the discomfort of not being liked, and discovered the mechanics of turning the tables. Now comes the final step, the consolidation of sovereignty. This is where the seed of doubt is sealed, when you realize you never needed approval to exist. Respect isn't a reward offered by others, it's a natural consequence of your discipline in not bowing down. What seemed paradoxical now becomes obvious. Seeking to be liked is a form of emotional slavery. Those who need acceptance surrender the keys to their own fortress. Those who dismiss it build invisible walls that cannot be penetrated. Respect arises when your presence is rare, your voice is precise, and your reaction is unpredictable. You are not at open war, but your simple way of being in the world becomes a declaration of silent power. In the professional arena, this strength translates into authority. You're no longer seen as the eager-to-please collaborator, but as the figure whose word carries weight because it's not wasted. Your silence in a meeting creates greater tension than any lengthy speech. Your restrained gaze, your firm posture, force others to measure their words. Those who sought to be liked were used. Those who command respect are consulted, feared, and preserved. Deep down, metamorphosis redefines your position. You no longer beg for affection. You no longer negotiate your dignity. You no longer overextend yourself. Your presence is a choice, not a reflex. The other understands that you don't depend on emotional crumbs, that you can disappear without hesitation. It is in this calculated absence that the most solid respect is born, the recognition that your sovereignty is non-negotiable. Love may be desired, but respect is inevitable for those who do not bow. In the digital world, the contrast is stark. While many still drown in noise and the need for visibility, you move like a calculated shadow. You don't justify yourself in virtual courts. You don't respond to predictable attacks. You don't feed on likes. Your aura is born of silence, scarcity, and the coldness that makes you unreadable. The noise dies on its own. Your presence grows precisely because it's rare. Those who once sought attention now find themselves chasing yours. Tools become natural habits. Calibrated silence no longer requires effort. It's part of their language. Strategic indifference isn't a performance. It's a reflection of a free mind. The rarity of their exposure isn't a forced calculation. It's the result of the clarity that energy is power. The precision cut no longer needs to be rehearsed. It comes at the precise moment, ending emotional games with a phrase that admits no reply. Internally, the transmutation is sealed. You are no longer a slave to approval. The initial doubt, whether it was possible to give up being loved and still maintain space, dissolves. What remains is certainty. Sympathy can open doors, but respect keeps you on the throne. The comfort of being loved is fragile, fleeting, and dependent. The weight of respect is solid, permanent, and autonomous. You pay the price of strategic solitude, but in return you gain absolute clarity. You discover that you don't need to be understood, applauded, or liked. You only need to maintain the discipline of not giving in to the addiction to approval. Anyone who looks at you feels the tension of what cannot be bought, cannot be predicted, cannot be possessed. It is this tension that defines power. The fortress is built. The game is complete. The cycle is complete. The doubt that plagued you at the beginning is replaced by unshakable conviction. Respect is the dark power that frees you from the prison of acceptance. You don't need to be liked. You need to be untouchable. And now you are. Just comment on the ritual phrase, "If you understood the essence, my respect is worth more than your approval."